So this is Jesus is a Tithe, Chapter 1, the Abba in Humanity. In this chapter, I would like to explain that we are the God kind. I will also show you that God has never been alone and has always been a family, and that He only operates inside the parameters of family logic. How can man relate to God? Is it even possible to have a real relationship with God? What does a meaningful relationship with God call for? What is the foundation for a relationship between God and man? Can God fit into our parameters of relating? Why does man even think he can have a relationship with God? I remember a conversation I had with a man sitting next to me on the plane en route to the United States, which was a connecting flight via Dubai. From Cape Town to Dubai, I was fortunate to have an open seat next to me so I could stretch my legs on the 9-hour flight, and I hoped for the same on the 14-hour flight to New York. As I searched for my seat on the plane in Dubai, I saw there was already someone sitting in the seat next to mine. My first thought was that I would have the opportunity to witness to him on the way, so I introduced myself to the young man, John, and took my seat. When we reached 10,000 feet and the seat belt sign went off, John started playing games on his cell phone. 5 hours later, the battery died. Frustrated, John put his phone away and grumbled, "These batteries are terrible. Why can't they make them like they used to when Nokia phone could go a week on a single charge?" Then he asked what I do for a living. I have come to realize the worst thing I could ever do at this point is tell the person I'm a pastor. Either it will be the end of the conversation or I will have to deal with an actor for the rest of the flight. I remember a flight when the person next to me did not ask me once about my occupation during our 7-hour flight. Then, just before we landed, he asked me. When I answered that I was a pastor, that is what he said. "Why have you not warned me?" Obviously, this was a reaction coming directly from the subconscious, not from his cognitive mind. I could clearly see that he connected pastors not only to God, but also to guilt and pain. I did not want that to happen this time in my conversation with John. So after he asked me, I told him that I declare the innocence of human beings. When he asked me what I meant, I told him how Adam represented all humanity in sin and Jesus Christ represents all humanity in innocence. He smiled a bit uncomfortably, but said that it sounded awesome. There seems to be a part of him that wanted to hear more, but another part that was afraid and on guard. After I witnessed to him for about 30 minutes, I could clearly see the message of grace really blessed him. Then, as we came in for our landing in New York and they told us to switch off our phones, place our seats in the upright position, and tighten our belts, a phone rang. When I realized it was John's phone and told him, he looked stressed and said that it couldn't be his since his phone's battery was completely flat. He also said that it was the first visit to the United States he had not registered on a U.S. cell phone network. I suggested, "Then it must be God who wants to speak to you." And John replied, "Then I will never pick up the phone. When I asked him why, he told me that God would only rebuke him for his bad lifestyle and that he was not ready for that kind of conversation. John was living in fear towards God. The fear in his heart is a manifestation of a wrong belief about who God really is. Believing God is a sin-conscious God will put you in a place where you want more distance between you and Him. No person has been made to function under scrutiny, rebuke, and the fear of punishment. Should a negative picture of God be in your mind when you think of God, it would be very difficult to approach Him. Most people relate to God based on their works and sins. Sad as it is, I have discovered that most people in the world, as well as people in church, relate to God based on their works and sins. As hard as it was for John to grasp God's love, it is just as difficult for thousands of people, even in church, to understand the dimension of the love of God. In my mind's eye, I can see God trying his best to explain who he really is to his children. I can see nervous smiles on the faces of millions as their hearts say yes, but the cognitive mind, with its critical reasoning, puts God's love in categories such as impossible or make believe. How can we ever understand God, who know who he is and relate to him in a world that perceives him to be something quite abnormal? John would not have minded sitting next to a police officer, a rocket scientist, doctor, even a politician. He could even have a fearless and interesting conversation with a pilot or a school teacher with no problem. Yet he was very uncomfortable with me because his heart believes God is angry and disappointed with him. Fear based on lies told about God holds us back from being at ease in our relationship with God. As human beings, we all have certain things in common. There is a kind of common sense which gives us a point of reference from where we communicate and learn to know each other. We are all human, we all need a place to stay, and we all work for a living. We are all relationship-oriented beings with the need to love and be loved, and we need security and hope for the future. It is within this undefined yet common logic that we relate to one another. We reason and relate inside the logic of our design. A picture about God that is alien to normal family life has been painted about God, resulting in pain and fear in the lives of millions of people. Let's say you find yourself seated next to an alien from outer space, haha. You won't have a clue what to say since you know nothing about the kind of being it is. You will have no idea whether it can understand your language or culture. Imagine how frightened you would feel approaching an alien if all you ever heard about them is that they're violent and want to kill people. If we're convinced that aliens are extraterrestrial beings who know our very thoughts but consider us their enemies, we will find it almost impossible to relate to them. Sadly, this is the picture that has been painted about God, causing great fear in the hearts of people. In attempting to communicate with an alien, all our questions would be relationship-based and in line with our logic, the only means by which we could attempt to make sense of the alien. Since our concerns would naturally lean towards such things as mortality, family life, safety, and survival, we would be limited in our ability to define a creature that does not relate to any aspects of our logic. So unless we are the same kind of beings with the same logic and needs, we will never be able to fully comprehend each other or relate in a meaningful way. Aliens cannot function inside the parameters of being human, so we would feel quite distant and uncomfortable with them. We relate to people based on similar life experiences and shared ground, so that when we perceive others as different, we tend to veer away from them, while we are naturally drawn to people with whom we can more comfortably relate. When I am in another country and hear someone speaking Afrikaans, I am not afraid to walk up to him and start a conversation. What gives me this boldness is the fact that we share the same culture and language and we have the same country of origin. If God is seen as a dangerous alien, you will never be comfortable with him next to you. In order to have a meaningful relationship with God, we need to find common ground, or our hearts will keep at a distance. What do we share in common with God? As we consider this, the following questions beg to be answered. God is a being who needs nothing and no one. He lives as I am that I am. How could I ever understand him? Does not his very being as God place a demand on me to change into something else? How could I not feel intimidated? How can we relate to God based on our design as relationship-oriented beings? If we don't really know God, we do feel intimidated and wonder if we must change to be in a relationship with him. Like the gentleman sitting next to me on my flight, the mere thought of God triggered feelings of guilt and fear, even anger. We instinctively feel we must please a being with whom we cannot relate. After all, God created the universe. He's way out of our league. What pressure trying to please the one with whom we cannot relate? At best, we will have a shallow relationship like that of a human and animal relationship. Let me explain what I mean by likening this to the relationship I have with my dog. Our dog is black and white, so we named him Piano. I can see that he loves me from the depth of his being. He's 100% loyal and committed to me. He obeys me with great enthusiasm and would never do anything to harm me. In fact, I believe he would give his life for me. However, there is one thing I need that he falls short in, and that is an intimate fellowship. I need someone with whom I can share my deepest feelings. I need someone with whom I can share my feelings, but Piano doesn't really understand me. As much as I love him, I cannot communicate with him. Like I do with someone else close to me, like Helena or my sons. The reason for this is obvious. We are not of the same kind. While I am a human being, he is the dog kind of animal being. For us to have a meaningful relationship with God, he has to be as much our kind as we are his. No amount of loyalty and obedience or adoration or worship my dog Piano bestows on me can ever be enough to form a meaningful relationship. He will never know what it is like to be me. It is impossible for him to enter my life and share it with me like another human being can. He cannot appreciate a good theological book, nor can he understand a profound movie or enjoy a beautiful show at the opera house. All he can do is adore me, but he can never share in my quality of life. We are actually worlds apart. No amount of food I give him or love and respect I show him will ever enable him to experience, for example, the emotions I feel when one of my sons wins a tennis match or gets 100% on a test at school. Our pets can never relate with us the way we human beings relate with one another. Throughout my life, I have discovered that people often relate to God as a dog relates to its master. When people are happy to see their master, they want to obey him. They want to go great lengths to prove their loyalty. They think that obeying the rules will earn God's approval and provision. When they feel they have failed to keep up necessary good works, they run and hide from God. This is a truly sad way to live. Piano's good works, like displaying joy when he sees me, protecting me, even just being in my presence, as well as his obedience, can never cause him to enter my level of life. Even my loyal provision for him cannot elevate him to what I am. He can sleep on my couch or even sleep in a golden dog box and eat steak every day, but he is stuck being a dog. God never intended for us to obey commands so that we could earn his daily provisions. What he wants for us is to share his quality of life. How sad it would be if we were to fall into such deep darkness that we would define ourselves by and find our existence in how much God gives us. The truth is, we can only find our identity and value in knowing him and knowing ourselves as he has always known us, never in our obedience and the amount of money he is willing to give us. Unless we recognize that we are truly 100% God's kind, we will never be able to have a meaningful relationship with him or share in his quality of life. We will not know how to relate to him. We will be nervous and won't know what to do in his presence. The quickest way to kill a relationship is for people to be confused about who they truly are. That's when side issues like money, health, and all other provision-related matters take center stage. Believing the foundation of a relationship is obedience to all kinds of principles is the total misunderstanding of the true meaning of relationship. Furthermore, falling in love with the prosperity that might be the outcome of obedience to God, to principles, will surely be the death of the relationship. In God we live and move and have our being, so we relate to God within the reality that we are the God kind and not in what we're his offspring, and not in what we can do for him or how he can bless us in this life. Seeing that it is not possible to have a meaningful relationship with God when we have a wrong idea of who he really is, let us see if we can find out who he really is. I have heard it being said that you cannot know who a person really is when you know. I have heard it being said that you can know who a person is when you know what he is like and when he is alone. when you know what he is like when he is alone.